Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. It was sunny here for 2 days, Russ, and then a half hour ago, torrential downpour. It's like, cats and dogs, mass hysteria, all that wonderful stuff. Typical. We'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So everybody saw maybe 2 hours ago that a consortium of companies are now going to have the NBA rights in another year, and the TNT crew that everybody loves will be gone. They'll be blown into oblivion. They'll be sent up in the rocket ship like Armageddon. And what's interesting to me is it's been the most successful one they've ever had. And some of them are under contract, not Barkley and not Shaq, but some of them might be under contract for TBS.
Ernie Johnson and
Ernie Johnson might be, they might be the longer term. And so they may not be able to go to these new networks. And it's just you wonder if a sport could ever figure it out instead of always going for the greed portion. Because I'm telling you, the more stations you add to carrying different type games on different days, on different nights, on different apps, you will lose some viewership. You may make more money because, people have to pay to be on these services, but I just think in the end it's still short-sighted, and I don't get it why they keep going towards that.
Yeah, but isn't that a little bit of the tail wagging the dog? I mean, the product is the product, and everything that surrounds it, while it's important, it's not as important as the product. And if those people buying it don't want to deal with it, what are you going to do? So
yeah.
It just makes it a less pleasurable experience. It's like if you're watching, again, this is a dilemma that I have all the time because I can watch Edmonton, Vancouver Game 7 on CBC with Chris Cuthbert doing the play-by-play, but it's in standard def because of some, apparently broadcast thing with Canadian TV going into the U.S. But if I want to watch the game in high def, like anybody in the 21st century, I have to watch it on ESPN, and the broadcasters are not as good on ESPN, and the color commentators and the in between periods are not as good on ESPN. So I have to flip flop between the two, and it's nice to be a one-stop shopper and go and watch like TNT if you want to watch a basketball game and see. The commentary. Now, Russ, I think there's a possibility that one of these consortiums or ESPN buys out Shaq's contract and Barkley's contract because they'd realize that drives a lot of traffic. But
yeah, sure. I think there's a good chance of that.
But Ernie Johnson
loses. The viewer tunes in for these guys. They love these guys. These guys have even, walked on to the hockey broadcast and they've added a lot. And I would have, not guessed that they could have added a lot, but that whole Shaq Hyman thing was pretty good. And, that's all going to be gone. That's it.
Yeah, but I mean, even though that's a really popular show, and it is, the NBA, not as much as football, but certainly more so than hockey and baseball, they have a lot of casual fans who really don't pay much attention to those kind of shows. I mean, we do because, we're sports nuts.
Right.
And, we like all that. So I don't know. I mean, it'll have an impact, but I wouldn't overstate it. You know what I mean?
I'll give an example. Inside the NFL for me for 20 something years was the best show. I watched it all the time. The minute it moved off of HBO, I have no idea where it is now.
Yeah.
Showtime, I think.
It's not, I'm just thinking, I mean, you'll still going to see some of those guys. I just don't think you'll see all of them. And I don't think it'll be the end of the world. Every time we think, that, well, you'll never be able to replace this or that, they do. So we'll see kind of how it goes. I mean, plus it's hard to predict, what chemistry will work and what won't. I mean, we've seen it in hockey, like who would have predicted that Bissonnette was going to end up being the dominant analyst that he is.
Yeah, who would even think Wayne Gretzky would give him the time of day?
Yeah, no, all that stuff.
He did play for him briefly.
Tony Romo has faded, but when he came along, people were just flabbergasted at how good he was. So I mean, I think they'll figure it out. But I agree with you. I think some of those guys will end up coming back because that's their thing. I think it's their thing more than we got to have it. They got to have it. I think that's kept them prominent in the spotlight. So they'll find a way.
All right, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024.
I'm Russ Cohen from NHLDraftBuzz.com.
I'm Kevin Allen from Detroit Hockey Now. Is that what you always say, Russ? You kind of
I mix it up, but I started that site about 6 months ago, and now we're getting into the stretch drive here.
Right. Yeah.
Plug. And I'm Michael Lagello. I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. When Russ is not talking over me, we talk about the news, the news and events in the league, and we'll talk about the two conference finals later in the show. While we have Kevin for the first half of the show, we'll talk about some of the news that's going on. And surprisingly, Kev, there was a trade yesterday between the Nashville Predators and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Really interesting how it came about. The reports is that in the end of season interviews, Ryan McDonough let Barry Trotz know that he wanted to be moved. And he had 2 years left in his contract at $6.75 million. And the Tampa Bay Lightning were interested, and it was a flip. There was a low draft pick along with McDonough going to Tampa for a 2 and a 4, and no salary retention. So Tampa gets the whole ball of wax, which starts to raise some questions about Tampa. But with Nashville, I mean, McDonough was their second best defenseman next to Roman Josi and really played well for them this year. So it's a bit of a loss for them. It's not something that they can't recover from because there's a lot of defensemen in the free agent market this year, and Nashville is a place that a lot of players want to go. But I think it's a little bit of a hit to the Predators. But what did you think of this deal? And we'll talk about Tampa after that.
Well, I mean, I think we always say this, but I think it's true. If a person doesn't want to be there, how hard is he? I mean, in Ryan McDonough's case, I'm sure he would have worked hard, but he wanted to. He wanted out, and because of that, I'm sure, and he knew that Tampa Bay had been talking about trying to find a defenseman. I mean, we talked during the season. I remember at one point of tuning in to see the Lightning play and not recognizing only one or two defensemen. So, now they're getting a guy who played pretty darn well for them this season, being the Predators. But, immediately on social media, Tampa Bay fans were just beside themselves about what this means. Because if you go to capfriendly.com, it shows you that they now only have $5 million left and they have to sign 5 players. So, you don't need to be a math major to understand that's $1 million a player, and you're not getting Steven Stamkos for $1 million. However, right after that, Patrice Brisebois, came out and did an interview, and it was clearly this was planned, where he pointed out, we have a plan, and they know full well that you're going to have to give Stamkos a minimum of $6 million. So I'm guessing, and this is just a pure guess, that they've got a home for Tanner Jeannot and Connor Sheary, which equals roughly, I think, $4.65 million. So that would put them up to almost $10 million. And if you're counting on the fact that 4 of those players are going to be under $4 million, they have enough to pay for Stamkos. Now, again, that's a guess. But, I had heard rumblings before that Jeannot and Sheary were the guys they were going to move out. Those are 2 guys they feel they can move quite easily. That's how it's going to be. So maybe they do have a plan. Like, if Stamkos wants $7 or $8 million, he's not going to be able to stay there.
No.
But almost every projection I've seen has been, the highest one has been $7 million. And most of them have been 6'1", 6'2", 6. for 3 or 4 years. So I think if that's the case and he's willing to, take that and he's not going to ask for more, then I think it'll get done. And, but, if he's going to want more than that, then they probably won't get done. And then Breezewell's going to say, well, we were willing to give him 6, but, he needed 7. So,
Russ, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, so, the first thing is with McDonough doing this, he did this with the Rangers too, right? Like, he's honest about it. And I think Barry Trotz was very classy and did the same thing Jeff Gordon did, and they traded him. And so I don't have any problem with that. I think it was interesting, McDonough called Stamkos, and I think that was by design to try and, say, hey, look, we're going to be better. I'm coming back. I'm sure that's something Stamkos will think about. But yeah, I think it's 50-50 with Stamkos, because I think even $6 million is a slap in the face for him, based on the stats that he puts up and everything else, what he's meant to the team and what he's doing now, not for past results. His today results are still great. But it will be interesting to see, because he has won with them, if he is just going to, take that salary, even though he'll be middle of the pack on the team in salary, where it's probably not fair. So I think it's 50-50.
Why do you think that? Just because, do you think he can get $8 million on the market?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you think he can go and get $8 million?
Boston.
Yeah, I think Boston would do it. I think Utah would do it if he'd want to go there. I think there's probably 4 or 5 teams that could do it.
Yeah. Well, I added them up today, and there's actually 7. But okay. I would say 5 of them he would not even consider going to. Right. So Boston's a possibility. You got to
remember, it could be Carolina too. If they move Netjes out and something else, they would have the money too.
Yeah. Well, that's another. I do want to talk a little bit about that too. Did anybody see the press conference that Don?
No, but I heard about it.
Oh God, it was hilarious.
That's funny.
He said, "Yeah, and say hello to his dad for me." So.
Well, yeah, I would say Boston would be a leading candidate because of their need for a center. If Toronto trades Marner, then all of a sudden that Toronto would have the cap space for Stamkos.
If the Rangers traded Gaudreau, they could do it too.
Right. So, with a lot of these teams that I think would have interest, they would have to clear space, just like Tampa would have to clear space. And I just looked it up, Kev, but with Jeannot and with Sherry, it's $665 million this year. The problem with Sherry is he's got another year after that. So I don't know how desirable Connor Sherry was. He didn't even get in the lineup for Tampa in the playoffs.
Yeah. So that's true, but he's fast, and he makes below the league average salary by a significant amount.
That's fair.
Jeannot, I don't think you have a problem trading. I think you'd like to get back some of the draft picks that you gave up, the boatload of draft picks that you gave up to get him from Nashville. Hey, maybe Nashville would be interested in him.
Listen, I got to be honest. The Jeannot thing did not work out great for them.
No, it didn't.
He hasn't had a lot. He hasn't had the impact they thought.
Russ, they were trying to hit a home run like they did with Hagel.
Right.
They tried to get somebody, who had term left on his contract, it was a low salary, who they could push sort of down the road in terms of, a qualifying offer and maybe go to arbitration in a 1-year deal. And then when they had the open cap space, they could sign him long-term like they did with Nick Paul and with Hagel. But it's not working out. He hasn't had the impact. Now, the one thing with Tampa, they're not going to trade. I had somebody send me a message. Well, they're just going to trade one of their defensemen like Cernak or Sergachev. Like, that defeats the purpose of trading for McDonough. The whole purpose was to get another top 4 defenseman. So you have Hedman, McDonough, Sergachev, Cernak, and then Perbix on your bottom pairing, and then you can add a veteran for veteran minimum, and you're fine. So, that if they traded a younger defenseman with term, that would completely be ass backwards. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that isn't even like a possibility, and you're right. I just, if he could even get 8, that's really only $1 million to him after taxes.
Yeah, but how many years could he get? He could probably get 3 years at least from somebody, maybe 4.
Well, I think he's getting a minimum of 3. It's just a question of whether he'll get 4. He's 34, so you can take him to
Hell,
I think he turns him 35. Pardon me?
He could get. I mean, he could get 5 years.
I don't think he'll get 5.
Well, what I'm saying is because of the new CBA. I mean, if he retires after 3 years, it just drops off as long as it's on the. He's 34 when he signs it. If he's 35 when he signs it, then I believe there's some cap ramifications with it.
I think 8x4 is realistic. They could get that. Yeah. We may not.
Yeah, I don't know. That seems high to me. But again, for a guy that, what's he worth? How much has he earned in his career? So,
well, let's see here. On his first deal, he made $37.5 million, and then the next deal he made $68 million. So that's
he made 105. Let's say he's,
and then his entry level deal,
yeah, 50 some after taxes with investment. He's probably worth $75 million. Is it worth it for him? Because even after taxes, I mean, the tax rate on those guys is high. Even if he avoids, obviously he does the state tax, but. So, that he probably only realizes $1 million of that, 2 million or $1.2 million, something of that. So,
but
and this is just kind of our personalities. Like I said on Brendan Moore, when Brendan Moore's personality, he's not going to lie. If he said, "I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it done," I mean, there was no reason. Yet everybody, including you guys, thought there was a chance he was going to leave.
Right.
And well, when Stamkos says, "I started here, I love it here, I want to stay here," that means something coming from Stamkos. So
it does, but the only thing I say that, I mean, obviously what happened at the beginning of the year, where he was miffed. Even people who knew him in the media believed that Stamkos was miffed at the way that Tampa Bay approached this, and the way they approached it is the same way they approached before they traded McDonough, the way they let Palat go to New Jersey, the way they let Killorn go to Anaheim. All these guys in their early to mid 30s who they didn't. Now Stamkos is different. He's the captain. He's still one of their best players. And I think he wants to stay there, Kev. But I also think it's a respect thing. A lot of these players, it's okay. I took less to stay with you in 2016. I took $8.5 million times 8 years because I wanted to stay in Tampa, but also because I didn't want to go and be the center of attention in Toronto and make $13 million or go to wherever else he was offered big deals. Now he's at the end of his career. I'm sure he'd like to stay in Tampa, but I'm sure he wants to get as much as he can from Tampa. And if he does,
40 goals and 81 points. There were 17 40-goal scorers, so not everybody has one. And 81 points, that's still in the top probably quarter of the league.
I don't dispute any of your facts. That's
what I'm saying. For him, it might be hard to swallow being a $6 million player when he is still a top player in this league.
Yeah, I mean, respect cannot be overlooked. I'm just saying
you're probably right.
The overriding factor, I think, for Stamkos is his desire to stay there. But maybe if it reaches the point where he, at the end, he says, these guys have just totally disrespected me, and then maybe he will. But I would think one of the things that shocked me, because let's go back, the negotiation between Steve Yzerman and Stamkos was not exactly warm and fuzzy. Back then. I mean, that's just not Steve's style. And he did the same thing with Dylan Larkin. It was not a warm and fuzzy negotiation. I mean, he fought Larkin over, giving him this money. Yzerman doesn't believe that you have to follow what the league is doing. That just because Barzal got this amount of money and the other center got that amount of money, that you got to give Larkin somewhere in that range. Like, he just doesn't understand why that's the case, that my budget is my budget and Dallas' budget is their budget. But saying all that, when we were wondering, like, how are they going to come out on the other side of this after this contention negotiation? Well, we didn't know is Yzerman was calling Dylan Larkin, or excuse me, not even calling. Larkin would stop by his office and would sit in a chair, and Yzerman would just talk in clinical fashion about why I'm fighting you on this and what I'm trying to do and why I, need money to sign Sider and Raymond and all this kind of stuff. So, did he do the same thing with Stamkos as well? And Brisebois certainly was a disciple of Yzerman. Has he done this as well? Did he call and say, hey, we're signing McDonough. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Kevin, I do have a question for you since Vancouver's out now, but Filip Hronek, you had first reminded me, go back and look at him because, you were saying how he was really developing in Detroit and then you were right. And then they traded him. Was that trade worth it in your estimation?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They would do it again because they have Axel Sandin Pellikka now out of that trade. And
right. So they still feel like it's okay.
And the one of the underlying reasons, and we wrote about this as well, that they traded him is Yzerman felt he would not be able to re-sign him when the time came because he saw I got Sider, I got Raymond, and he didn't, of course, have Kane, who he'd like to re-sign, which I don't think is going to work out for him. But
and Sandin Pellikka is terrific. I was just curious because really Hronek was a nice pickup for them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, though. He turned down, from what I've read, over $6 million. And he wants 7 or 7.5. So there's a guy that
do that in Vancouver.
Yeah, there's a guy that I think respect us big. Like and I don't know, like he rarely talked to the media, so it was always hard to get a handle on him. But it sure felt that he pouted when Sider, I'm talking about Hronek, when Sider sort of just took over and got all the power play time and all that. So.
And he doesn't get the power play time in Vancouver because of Quinn Hughes. So, but and I know that he partnered well with Hughes this year, and that's a good combo for them. But Vancouver's going to have a lot of decisions to make with unrestricted free agents, and Hronek is a RFA with arbitration eligibility, so they could walk him to free agency. Although he's probably going to get a big number in arbitration, depending on what the two sides offered up. I want to go back to Neckish, Kev, before you have to leave here, because that's an interesting situation with Carolina. I mean, they've got a lot of contracts coming up. They have a lot of players like Seth Jarvis, who's an RFA, doesn't have ARB rights, but has had some big years so far in his young career. I mean, Neckish is a 20-plus goal scorer. He's had 28 and 24 the last 2 years. He's 2 years away from unrestricted free agency, but his name is out there. I mean, it seems like, and I don't know if it's just, people just drumming up, oh, Neckish is going to get traded, or that if it's legitimate, but it sounds like his name is on the market and it's going to be on the market for a while. What do you?
Well, I think he's put it on the market. I don't think Carolina, again, I know Don Waddell really well. I know how he thinks, and he's another guy that he says exactly what he's thinking. And he basically said, well, that's great that he wants out, but I'm not going to make a deal that's not favorable to us. And, I thought that was a message saying, I'm not looking for 2 seconds and a third, so I think, if he's going to do it, but, they have a mess well beyond that. If you go look at their cap situation, they have 4 crucial players, and this team is still in the, with the window wide open next year. And they've got to try to sign all those. And, if they give everybody what they're worth, they'll come, they'll have to play with about 19 players. They can almost make it. But I'm counting Gunsel on that because I think they're counting Gunsel.
No, they're re-signing him, I'm pretty sure.
Well, they want to.
Yeah.
And I think he wants to go there. But, what if it comes down to they got to give up one of those guys? Probably Pesky, but
Pesci, I think, could be gone. And, the interesting thing about Neckish is, and I think Don Waddell's finding this one out the hard way, like this is just the way the NHL is. It's hard to develop centers in the NHL. And I don't think Neckish is a center. I don't, and I've tried to tell Flyers fans because they're like, "Oh, we should get him." It's like, yeah, I don't think he's a good center. You look at his last couple of years; he hasn't been that good at it, and they took him off center in the playoffs. And then you look at Kotkaniemi, and he's failing at center too.
Right.
And so it's a hard position, man.
Well, let's just say this: what Randy posted that I just put up on the screen. There is not a chance in hell that they won't qualify.
No.
And he walked away as an unrestricted free agent. They'll qualify him if they can't afford him. If they think they're going to qualify him and then trade him. That's what they would do, because
that isn't even something. They had no meeting in which they said, "Should we qualify him?"
But no, this is the gauntlet that Don Waddell faces. Jack Drury, useful player, restricted free agent.
Don't get him re-signed. He's cheap.
Yeah, Seth Jarvis RFA, Neckish RFA with Arb rights. Unrestricted free agents: Gensel, Martinuk, Neusen, Teravainen, and on defense, Chatfield, D'Angelo, Pesci, and Shea.
Yeah, I mean, I know Teravainen will probably come back to them because he's one of their guys, and I feel like who was the other one that I was just thinking about?
Shea. I think they'll re-sign Shea.
Shea, I think they'll re-sign. Yeah, I think.
I hear he wants a lot of money though. So
yeah, well, maybe they'll lose. I think they'll get him or Pesci. They won't get both, and then I think Jarvis they could string along for another year. Honestly.
Yeah, I think the one thing that could screw him up with those others is, the Arb rights.
Yeah.
Because he has good numbers. So.
Yeah, and they shouldn't re-sign D'Angelo. He caused nothing. I mean, for whatever, trying to get him to just be an agitator as a defenseman isn't the greatest thing in the world because his defense still stinks. I didn't see much use for him this year. They didn't even play him for like long stretches this year.
Who are you talking about?
D'Angelo. I don't think they should resign him.
Oh, they have no. Yeah, he's long gone.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
One of these. For those who didn't see the Don Waddell, Rod Brindamore press conference, it was really priceless because one of the reporters asked about, how do we pronounce his last name? Because I've heard it now like for years. Several different ways, but anyway, his dad has said essentially what it comes down to, and Don Waddell said basically it's about the power play. He wants to be on the power play, and then Ron Brindamore, unsolicited, said, let me tell you a story about the power play. He said, every dad hates me if their kid is not on the power play. so there's five guys, there are five guys out there and love me because their kid is first up on my power play. They absolutely love me. He said the rest of them, they all hate me.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So just again, before you leave, Kev, I saw Ty Anderson, our former compatriot from.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think I know him.
Yeah.
He had asked Don Sweeney about the goaltending situation in Boston, and Sweeney said, he'd like to keep the tandem of Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman. But I mean, in all reality here, he's got an asset in Ullmark. I know that goaltending is important, and they maybe don't want to play and load 60, 65 games on Swayman, but you can always get a backup goaltender. Ullmark is former Vezina winner, making $5 million a year left on his contract, and there are a ton of teams out there that are looking for goaltending. So I can't imagine that they come back with that tandem next year.
No, I don't think so either, because it sounds to me like if you listen to Ullmark's exit press conference with the media, he almost sounded like a guy that's resigned that he's going to be traded, and this time it sounds like he will accept it. I think he wants to play, and he can see that Swayman's ready and needs to go on. And then Boston has some cap space, but they would like more, obviously. So I did want to go. I don't know how much time I got left here, but I did want to. Matt Vey,
Mitchkov,
yeah. Because that's a remarkable situation there. For those who are not following that, the Russian guy from the Federation is not only endorsing, but almost seems to be, he was the first one to float the idea that it would be better off for him if he comes over to the NHL. Now, that's contrary to everything we're hearing, what's going on over in Russia as they try to keep all their guys. But for Mishkov, they seem to want to get him out of Dodge. And they're couching it, and maybe this is completely true, that it would be best for the kid, that he needs to go, he wants to go, the time is right, and that, according to the rules, and I feel like I should put that in air quotes, either the agent or the player has to pay to get out of the contract. But it sure sounds like it's going to happen, and I believe it's going to happen because it seems to have the full endorsement of the Russian Hockey Federation, and I really don't get it.
I've dug into it. I've checked with one of my sources. I do believe it's going to happen as well. It looks like the amount is like $440,000.
Yeah.
So there's all these jokes that Dan Hilferty will maybe sell a car to the kid for $440,000. Who knows? I think that part will get it done. There are some people there that are not happy about it, like you said, some of the big power brokers, because they don't want guys to go like this. And then there's the reality is he never played for the big club, and the big club, and they didn't use him in the traveling all-star game either. So he's not a finished product coming over. He's not like Kaprizov coming over. He's really good. He's got a lot of talent, but he's got a lot of things to do to round out his game. And that is another reason why I think they're considering doing this, because, he's not the guy that could be the best player in the league yet.
No, he's not. And he did, one of the stipulations is that, he's got to stay on the roster. Now, with every other coach in the league, that's not really a problem, just keeping the guy on the roster. But I don't know. I worry a little bit about John Tortorella.
Well, you do worry with John keeping him on the roster. I'm sure there'll be a stipulation he can't just play him like 5 minutes a game. That first line thing was clearly Google Translate, though, because that came around where it was going to be stipulated that he has to be a first liner. No way in hell. Right?
That wasn't a Google. I mean, it may have been Google Translation, but that was a media screw up.
Yeah, definitely was a screw up.
That was never in there. Some member of the media interpreted that as saying that, and how he got it. Yeah, that was never part of it. So that's actually come out all afternoon. So So
and just to answer Chris, he's not another Filatov, because Filatov was kind of like a lazy, I want it my way, or I don't really want to play in this league kind of thing, and that's why he didn't work out. That's a long ways ago. Filatov was one of my earlier drafts.
Hey, one other thing, and Russ can speak to this too, but what's interesting is everybody loved Mishkov last year.
Yeah,
there was no scouts that didn't think he was not a dynamic, going to be an impact player. But Demidov, who's going second now, I've now had 3 different scouts tell me this guy's going to score 50 goals in the NHL. Like, he is really good, Demidov.
Yeah,
he's Mishkov.
I think Michkov isn't as dynamic as him, even though he's flashy. And I agree with those scouts. I think Demidov is really special because he's got this motor that just never stops, and he's always creating. And he just needs to also play in the KHL for a year and really shine there. But I think he's going to. I think that's his next step. So I don't think the Russian factor is going to affect him more than 2 or 3 slots. I still think there's a chance like someone takes Levshunov second, same way, just because they're like, hey, we want a top defenseman. He's who we have, tops on our board. We're taking him regardless. But whoever gets Demidov is going to get a tremendous player.
If I was the Blackhawks, I'd take Demidov. Because, I mean, if it takes, in 2 years, then it takes 2 years. But, if he's going to be a 50-goal scorer.
Wait, so you're saying take him over Celebrini?
No. Celebrini's going 1 to San Jose, and then Chicago.
Oh, San Jose's going first. Never mind. That's right. Yeah, I think the Blackhawks should take him.
Yeah.
My mind forgot who was first and second at this point.
Yeah.
All right, Kev, thank you.
All right.
We'll talk to you down the line. Hopefully,
I'm actually going to an AHL game. Looking forward to it. I'm going to see the Milwaukee Admirals, and Askarov is back in goal, so I don't know if he was injured or not, but he played well in game 2.
See how he does. Let us know.
Yeah, and he'll be up against Costa tonight, and Simon Edmondson, who's the Red Wings' big guy. One final thing, Russ, your take on what McKeon says about the Red Wings prospect pool being number 1?
Yeah, I think they're really close. I think they're in the top 3.
Yeah,
I do. And it's because they have great defensemen. Like, that's a thing that the league is coveting. And they have 3 great young defensemen.
Yeah. I mean, I've already told a bunch of Red Wing fans, don't get too carried away. Like, there's no right answer here. I mean, everybody's just.
No, but they also have other guys like Mazer that's never going to get talked about till he's there. And they're really deep. Really, really deep.
I know the Athletic had Buffalo's number 1, and that was a few months ago. But if you look at Buffalo's prospects, they're all forwards, and they have nobody except for the Russian kid Komarov, who's playing for Drummondville in the Memorial Cup, all their prospects. It's Osland, Savoy. It's all of them are forwards, and for that, you would like sort of like a breakdown to have some on forward, some on defense, but you can't have everything. But anyway, all right. Well, Kev, let us know how that game is.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Talk to you later. Okay, Russ. Just a couple things. Jim Hiller's interim tag was removed. He is now the head coach of the LA Kings. I would hope that number 1 on Rob Blake's list is getting a goaltender. It has to be, but we thought that last year, and he went cheap and old with Cam Talbot, and 6 weeks into the regular season, he realized he had Cam Talbot.
Yeah, I think Miller did pretty well, but doesn't it seem like they just did this by lack of other great choices or people interested?
Well,
there's a lot of action going on.
One of the choices out there that everybody's interviewing is the guy that he just fired. So McClellan's being interviewed all over the place. Yeah,
right, but you know what I'm saying? Like, don't you feel like there was a lack of Yeah, no.
I mean, Sheldon Keefe isn't going west. He's either taking the New Jersey job or he's taking a year off. McClellan is, somebody fired. Are they going to go Jay Woodcroft? No, I think it was basically they were resigned to taking the guy, that they had. Now it's funny because we haven't heard anything on Pascal Vincent in Columbus. We haven't heard anything about, Winnipeg has interviewed McClellan. They interviewed Berube. The talk is maybe Scott Arneal's going to get that job, but it doesn't seem like
JD asking for permission for Pekka at some point and seeing what Chris Drury does, because JD's a smooth operator, and I can see him making that call before he decides what to do with Vincent.
Do you think Pekka, after 1 year as an NHL assistant, is I mean, he was
worse than Vincent.
No, but he was an assistant in Rochester last year under Seth Appert. He was an assistant under Laviolette, along with Laviolette and Housley with the Rangers. I don't know. I think maybe another year or two as an assistant.
I mean, that might be prudent, but again, I think if they could get him, they probably would get him.
That's it's a question. It's a question of whether he wants to make that jump now and whether he thinks he's ready or not. So all right. We'll do our predictions and our little look at the first. Start with the East, Rangers and Florida. I'll give you Anthony's prediction. He picked Florida in 7 games.
Okay.
I'll start it off here. I'm picking the Rangers in 7. I think it's a really close series, as opposed to what we were told by Dennis on Monday. I can't imagine that they don't start this series with Rempe in the lineup unless what they're trying to do is put the onus on the officials. If Bennett and Lomborg and Cousins are running amok and they're running people into the boards, then the referees are going to have to call penalties, and then the Rangers power play will get an opportunity to sort of quiet down the Panthers. Because if the Rangers power play is working, then they're down 2 or 3 goals because Panarin and Kreider and those guys are scoring goals. So, I mean, obviously I think the power play is going to be a big factor in this series for the Rangers. I think they have the goaltending advantage, not by a big amount, but enough of an amount. I think their defense, as long as they play their big four, keep Eric Gustafsson off the ice if it was up to me. Play 5 and have him be the Dmitry Mironov back in the Leaf days where they had 6 defensemen, but they never played Mironov. But I think it's gonna come down to goaltending. I think it's gonna be a very physical series, but I think Shesterkin will outduel Bobrovsky, and that's why I'll take the Rangers in 7.
Yeah, I just did a nice article on it's called Bobrovsky versus Shesterkin on Sportsology, and I looked into their stats. I know Bob since the very beginning, and I've covered Shesterkin pretty well as well. And the one stat that I found that gave Shesterkin the edge was with a man down, Shesterkin's save percentage is .932, and you've got to be your team's best penalty killer, and he is. The Rangers' penalty kill is 3rd, Florida's 6th. Now Bob's is not bad. Bob's is .923 in that same situation. So I really think Shesterkin gives them a slight edge, but it's not enough to say that it's the series. I honestly think the physicality of Florida is what's going to do it here, and I go Florida in 6. The only reason I don't agree with Anthony Florida in 7 is because I think it's so hard to win a Game 7 at MSG. Like Tampa did it, but they did it when McDonough was really injured, and that started Tampa's whole dynasty, really. So it's hard to do, though. And so I think Florida in 6 is achievable, but the Rangers can certainly win this series, but I think it's going to be an exciting series.
Yeah, it definitely is. And yeah, I mean, if the Rangers win, I think, and like I said Rangers in 7. I think that they distinctly have the advantage in that 7th game at home. By the way, I just have to say this. Anybody who watches sports, make sure that you don't turn the game off. Even when you think it's over with. I did this. I mentioned this on the show back early in the year, and people may not remember this. There was a shootout game between the Leafs and the Panthers, and Joseph Wall was in goal, and I can't remember who it was for Florida scored what we thought was the winning goal, but there was a double tap, and I turned the game off at that point, thinking that Florida had won.
That's it. It's over.
And only the next day, because I went and made myself something to eat, then I went to bed. Only the next day did I realize that the Leafs had won the game. The same thing happened last night. I'm watching, and there was no hockey on, so that was the only reason I was watching Celtics and Pacers. And the Celtics were down by 3 points, and the Pacers got the ball, and it was like 15 seconds left. And I'm like, they got possession, and what happens? They throw the ball in. It goes off Siakam's hands. It goes to the Celtics. They tie it up on a 3-pointer, and they win in overtime. And I didn't find out about it until this morning when I'm looking. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's
I told people on Locked On Flyers to bet the Celtics. I was right.
Yeah, there you go. But although if you bet the line, you would have lost because I think they were favored by double figures or double. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't say bet the line. I didn't say that.
So. Okay. The Western Conference. Edmonton, Dallas. You go first, Russ.
Yeah.
By the way, Anthony has Dallas and 7.
Yeah, I think Dallas is a really good team. They've surprised me. I went back and looked at Jake Ottinger's stats. He did shut him out last game, but before that, he's not done well against Edmonton at all. And I know they said McDavid hasn't done well against Dallas at all either, but there's 4 key guys on Edmonton. And yeah, I don't love Stuart Skinner. I don't. But I also look at Evan Bouchard, who really nobody talks about and is having a tremendous playoffs, like just tremendous. Like this is everything. Anybody who liked him as a prospect, this is what you thought Evan Bouchard could be.
Right.
We had like an 80-point season, and now he's doing even better in the playoffs. So you look at that. I look at Dallas, and I say, yeah, Rupe Hintz, the injury worries me. The Ottinger previous past against Edmonton worries me a little bit. And so I'm going Oilers in 6. I know that's not the popular pick here, but I just think it's hard to stop those 4 or 5 great guys. And I think Skinner just needs to be average. I think Ottinger is going to give up 2 to 3 goals a game, and so will Skinner. So it'll depend on the great players to step up or not.
Yeah, it was Anthony has Dallas in 6.
6. Okay.
I'm picking Dallas because I think Edmonton sucks. I think they're
can't suck if they're in a conference final. Okay,
sure they can because and then this is the thing. This is an argument against the NHL playoff format. if you look at what Dallas has had to go through, where they beat Vegas and Colorado to get to the conference final, and if you look at Florida having to beat Tampa and Boston to get to the conference final, and you look at Edmonton and they had to play LA, and then who they beat in the last round. So I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think they're a very good team. I think they have great players. I don't think they're a very good team. Skinner is an
average. Sweep them, right?
No. I think McDavid. I think McDavid and Draisaitl are good enough to win a couple games, but that doesn't mean they're serious. Like I said, they have great individuals. They don't have a great team. I think they have average goaltending. I mean, Skinner is better than Jack Campbell, but it's not saying much. And they had to go to Calvin Pickard in the previous series.
They might have to go back to him again.
They might. But I just, I think that had Vancouver had Demko, Vancouver would have won the series.
But we don't know.
Not to say that Svilov's played badly, but he didn't. But I think
he had a better chance. We know that.
Right. And then they lose Besser in Game 7. And then they lose by a goal. So, I mean, Edmonton right now has had all the breaks. The breaks end now because now the Hins injury, I think, is concerning, but they say he's going to play.
Yeah, I think he's a hit away from problems, though.
Well, we don't know. Do we know what the injury is?
It's upper body, and you know what happens when it's upper body, what we suspect.
Yeah, it could be shoulder, it could be hand. We don't know what the upper body is.
Well, hand is usually not upper body.
Right. Here's the thing. Hins is good enough defensively to shut down one of McDavid or Draisaitl. It's going to be up to another center, whether it be Sagan or Pavelski, to shut down or limit the other. And that's the problem for Dallas, because Pavelski is not as quick as he used to be. Sagan is not particularly good defensively. It's going to have to be more of a team effort. But Dallas, this is the thing, as opposed to the other teams that they played, Dallas can go blow for blow with Edmonton offensively. They have better depth, forward and defense. You've got Bouchard, who's great. Nurse, what's that?
I got to go, or you're going to be calling me the party.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I'll just say, yeah, Bouchard is great. Nurse is really good. And then the rest of their defense sucks. So Dallas in 6. Okay, we'll be back on Friday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For the departed Kevin Allen, for the soon-to-be departed Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello, not being interrupted. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.